Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We are going to give just a few more seconds just to let people join, a few people on the line already. But we'll wait a few more seconds and then we'll get started. Okay, great. Lots of people on, which is good to see. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Caseware AiDA webinar. Now, for those of you joining, I'm sure you've heard a lot about our new AI digital assistant, AiDA. As a bit of an introduction, my name is Natasha Kobrak, and I head up the solutions team here at the UK. And I also have with me Sarah Butler, who heads up solutions in APAC, and she's also the global solutions lead for AiDA as a whole. So Sarah has joined us today to basically take us through AiDA, take us through what AiDA can do, what it means for us here in the UK, and also we've got some really exciting new features that are fresh off the press as of yesterday. And also, you may see as well, we have Mitchell Payne, he's product owner here in the UK. Mitch will be helping to facilitate the webinar as well. So just a little bit of an update. Caseware AiDA, we was essentially launched at our client conference in October here in the UK. She has been around for a few months already, and I know Sarah will take us through that in the next slide. But we are in the process now of rolling AiDA out to interested firms. We've have a number of customers already asking to enable her on their system. We will be giving an email address at the end for anyone who is interested in hearing more. So there is going to be a marketing email address that you can contact if you're interested in getting the registration form in order to set her up for your firm. But if you also don't want to send an email, you can actually just pop your email address in the Q&A. That's only visible to us, and we will be happy to contact you with information on how to, essentially with the link to the form for you to register your interest for her. So feel free to, like I said, send your email address in the Q&A if you want, or otherwise you can contact us on our marketing email address, which I will send at the end. Also at the end, we'll open up for questions. So if anyone does have a question, feel free to pop it into the Q&A chat box at any point during this presentation. We will collate all the questions and get to as many as we can at the end of this session. So just, send them over as we go along and we will answer them then. So I guess that's yeah, all I have to talk about. So maybe Sarah, do you want to kickstart the presentation?
Sure, I will. Thank you, Natasha. Pleasure to be with you all. I'm doing this from Melbourne in Australia, so that's my get out of jail card. If I say something silly, that's because it's 9 o'clock at night, and I can tell you it's a lovely day. It was a warm day, so the weather, I can assure you, you've got a nice day ahead of you. Jokes aside, Caseware AiDA, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to introduce AiDA to you. I do understand a number of attendees today will have seen Caseware AiDA at CWX recently. But I guess to delve into a little bit more detail for you today, Caseware AiDA is our new AI tool. For those that might know that our namesake that we're using here, of course, is Ada Lovelace. There's a lovely picture of her on screen there. If you don't know, she is considered one of the pioneers of computer science back in the 19th century and considered to be one of the first computer programmers. So it's lovely to have her as our namesake for our technology, but rather conveniently, AiDA also stands for AI Digital Assistant. And so as you can see at the bottom of this slide, we have had AiDA out for a little while now. We're basically working on a staggered preferred access rollout. And so far we've enabled her for firms in Australia and New Zealand, in the US, Canada, Singapore, and now, of course, we're talking to firms in the UK. And we have already started turning her on for some. And no doubt after today, some of you will look to be added to that list. So for you in the UK, there is an enablement process that will require you guys to opt in to this preferred access program. So Natasha will take you through a little bit of that at the end of the session, just to explain the next steps and ensure you know what you need to do if you would like to pick up AiDA and have a play. So the technology has been out, as you can see there, for a little while now. It's still considered version 1, but she already includes some really powerful features. I'll demo a few of those for you today, but it is worth flagging up front that it's still in development, in early development. We have a very exciting roadmap of fantastic ideas that we simply prioritize and start working down. A lot of those are coming from our early adopters out in the real world using AiDA alongside their everyday work in accounting and audit. We have some fantastic use cases already provided to us, and we absolutely welcome suggestions from you as well as you do start to use this technology. We want to hear where you can see AiDA offering efficiencies and help to you on the job. So don't hesitate in sharing your feedback as you do start to use the technology. So a little bit about what you need to know. So as I've mentioned, we've got this early, oops, sorry, wrong slide, there we go, early access phase of our rollout. It is an entirely cloud-based solution we're rolling out. Now, that means it does sit on Caseware Cloud for you and works through the Caseware Cloud apps. But as you can see here on screen, we have also flagged there is a limited access for desktop working papers Caseware firms, provided you are in that hybrid environment, because ultimately she is still a cloud technology piece. So if you don't have a Caseware Cloud site, you can't actually use AiDA. If you do though, and you are a working papers firm, you can elect to be a part of this early access program as well, or preferred access program, I should say. I will show you very briefly during the demo what it looks like in desktop. Be aware though, it is quite a limited scope for AiDA and what we can do in desktop. A lot of the innovation and the fantastic stuff the power stuff we're able to do is cloud-based only. Now, ultimately, it is also important to flag up front that Caseware AiDA is an assistant only. She is designed to enable you to do your jobs better. She won't replace you or anyone on the team. It won't particularly replace you and the need of you to provide or use your knowledge, expertise, and in particular, your professional skepticism and opinions of the results AiDA is actually providing to you. It is important to keep that in mind. It's not necessarily like a co-pilot that takes place and writes content for you. You do need to be being skeptical throughout your audit engagements and even through the use of AiDA. So she simply sort of sits beside you, helps you get your job done more efficiently and more effectively. Now, the other critical piece of AiDA is that we have built her very deliberately fit for purpose. So there are parameters or rules built into the back of AiDA and in her very design to ensure that she only assists you with audit and accounting related matters. So if you do ask questions, they need to be related to audit and accounting and that domain, and she will assist. If you start asking questions about just general stuff, she will just politely say she can't assist you with that. If you ask a question or write a prompt that is particularly vague, she may ask you for clarification. And if you write a really short query or prompt, she will try to respond in a short response. So she is very reflective of how you use her, but that fit for purpose piece is critical. It only addresses audit and accounting related domain matters. Now, because she sits in Caseware Cloud, that means our SOC 2 and ISO 27001 certifications still apply to her, which is obviously a really important thing. And hopefully when I do start to demo it, it'll make a little bit more sense as to why this is quite a unique piece to AiDA. I know a lot of practices are already using AI technology in audit and in accounting, but because AiDA is sitting inside the Caseware environment and inside Caseware Cloud, our certifications apply, and that means that it is locked down and contained within your firm's Caseware Cloud. So that is something that is a really helpful thing, I think, for people to understand as they do start using her. The final point is also a comfort thing too, hopefully for you. We have elected very deliberately from day one in the design of AiDA not to retain prompts. Now, for those that are still learning about AI, the prompt is the question or the request you actually put into the technology. Now, it's really common for AI technology to retain those prompts. It sucks it in, and as a result, it starts to learn and improve. Now, we have deliberately decided not to be doing that. We are simply using off-the-shelf large language models in AiDA or underlying AiDA. If the tech heads in the room, Anthropic series of large language models, particularly Haiku and Sonnet, sit in behind AiDA. And so we simply use those, and as those models are upgraded, we will upgrade AiDA's link to those too. So we are not training on any of the prompts you process through Caseware AiDA. And the comfort thing there is if you're putting a question through AiDA related to a client of yours, that's a particularly dangerous thing to do out in the AI world with any piece of technology, because it will learn that. And if you're putting sensitive material into an AI engine, that could disappear and be shared. Inside Caseware Cloud, we aren't retaining anything. We aren't teaching the model. So that stuff will not be passed on. So there's some really critical pieces there about the design of the technology that hopefully will give you some comfort. Okay, so at this point, we'll just jump in and show you the technology. There's probably 4 key things to cover off on. The 4 key functions of version 1 of AiDA being the chatbot, the summarize options, our very new fast versus enhanced button, which as Natasha alluded to earlier, that is literally 24 hours old. And so I have played and tested today just to make sure she's still reacting like I think she should, and I think she will today, but it's AI. It's Gen AI. She could say something particularly odd at times, depending on the prompt I enter. So if you do get a funny answer, that's because I didn't word my prompt very well. And so as a side note, something our customers are already learning who are using AiDA is the writing of prompts becomes quite a craft. And I think over time, as we're using more and more AI in our everyday jobs, we will all become great prompt engineers. That will be a particular skill of the future, that's for sure. There is also a reference there to knowledge bases. So what I will do is I will flick into my cloud audit file. Now, I started the session by explaining I'm an Aussie, I'm in Australia, therefore I'm actually using an Australian cloud site. Now, that means this file is based on an Australian audit tool, but AiDA works exactly the same way. I'll do my best to enter a few international related questions or UK related questions and prompts as I go, but please excuse my slight patriotism or leaning towards some Aussie questions and answers at times. But I think you'll recognize all the features and functionality of Cloud Audit if you are using that technology. You can see the button on the right, I've just toggled Opens Caseware AiDA. It's a right-hand panel running down the right-hand side of your screen there, and she will appear once you have had it AiDA enabled for your firm, and you have then, as a firm administrator, whether that's you or someone else in your office, allowed access to her for staff groups. And that all comes as part of the rollout of AiDA, so don't worry about understanding that just yet, but that will be the last step of the process, enabling for your firm. We'll start with the chatbot. And so as you can see, you have a question box at the bottom, and I've done these presentations enough to know it's not worth me trying to type this in front of you. So I have a list on my other screen of all the pre-written questions, so I don't type something silly in front of you with a horrible typo in the middle of it. We'll start with a really basic question, and this is a good one to demonstrate the tool working because it's exactly the stuff that she works to help you with. And as you can see there, she's providing guidance, she's answering queries about audit and accounting, as I mentioned, that tailoring and the fit for purpose development of her. Quick access to support resources, I'll cover that in the knowledge-based concept last. But as you can see, that is how the chatbot basics work. Now, I'm going to every now and again refresh my conversation because you can interact with AiDA. You can ask her a question, she will respond, and then you can ask a follow-up question to that, and you get a thread going on that topic. At any point, the reset button will just clear that out and you can start a new conversation or thread. So I'm going to show my prowess here by asking a question that relates to the UK now and ask about the code of ethics that you will be working under. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, provided you write that prompt correctly, she will help you with the relevant response. So you can see they have asked specifically about the Code of Ethics from the ICAEW, and she has given me a response based on that specifically. I could ask the Aussie question about our Corps Act here, for example, and get that answer too. So it is very context aware, provided you write the prompt in the right way. So I'm learning myself as I use AiDA more about that prompt engineering. Keep in mind, it's really helpful to put a country reference in, or perhaps a standard or a legislation reference as you go. You'll see at the bottom of the responses, there's 3 basic buttons here. They're probably pretty self-explanatory, but just to confirm, we do want to learn a little bit about her and your use of AiDA. If you get a particularly unhelpful answer, if you've got the capacity of time to tell us that, we'd appreciate that. That's why there is only a negative feedback button. We don't need you to tell us how great, well, no, we want to tell you to tell us how great she is, but we don't put a button there for you to do that. If you hit the thumbs down button, you can tell us a little bit about why that was a particularly unhelpful response. But as I mentioned, we can't and don't capture what you're asking. So if you do want to tell us about a particularly negative situation, you will need to actually give us the information in the box, just as a side note. If you are going to use the responses she gives you, and I'll give you some more suggestions of how you can use her and hopefully why the next button will become important to you, you can copy her responses. Now, V1, so it is just a blank copy of text, and you can paste that into a work paper. It's just unformatted text that you can then edit as much as you'd like. You could Control C and Control V shortcut elements of a response yourself by highlighting. The copy button will, of course, copy the whole thing. And there is a read aloud button. I won't bother with that today for potential audio issues inside Zoom, but that is obviously a nice accessibility feature. She will read the response to you. Rather interestingly, it's quite a robotic voice, and it's a male voice, but we refer to AiDA as a her, so we've got a little bit of conflict there, but hopefully that is at least meaning she's accessible to all through that read aloud button. Okay. So I might at this point just open a document, because there are elements in the design of her being able to see where you are in a document and help you with that. So you can see this is an independence questionnaire, for example, and I mentioned earlier about our Australian legislation. So I can ask a question about APES 110. And now I'm typing in front of you, and look what I did. I told you that's why I don't type in front of you. 110 reference. And so because I'm inside the questionnaire, that gives her an element of context. So she's given me some detail in particular about the standard. I apologize, that was a bad prompt, a really poorly written prompt, but she can still work with that. And because I probably haven't been very specific, she's given me a nice general definition of what APES 110 is all about. I've talked about the refresh button. I'll use that one. And at this point, I will jump out, and I might jump into another document. If I go to, for example, we've got understand the entity worksheets in our particular template in Australia. If I was in this document and asked a question about where in this work paper governance was covered, she will help me locate content. So that can be quite helpful if you're in a big chunky file and there's lots of content inside it. You can use her in order to navigate around a file. You can even use that same context outside in the document screen and ask for some direction as to where certain procedures are in an engagement. She will also help you with that, which is really helpful. And I mentioned I used an example on the Code of Ethics before. If I now asked a question related to, for example, 315, standard close to my heart, having helped with the development of the revisions to our products for the risk assessment standard a year or so back, you can see I can ask a question. As long as I reference using the right acronym or the right country code, she can give me the right content from that particular standard. And where possible, you can, and this is one, full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure she will give this to us today post update, but you can request links to standards. And if she can give you it, there you go. She has found one for you from the IAASB website. So I can actually get a URL to navigate directly to that standard should I want to as well. Okay, and I mentioned using her as a way to navigate around a file. If I'm in the documents screen and I want to find where prepayments is covered, I can get her help with that even here. There you go. So she's assumed in the trade and other receivables and expenses. Full disclosure again, I ran that earlier and she gave me a more helpful answer and actually gave me a folder name. So again, Gen AI, each time you ask some of these questions, you will potentially get a slightly different answer. Now, that's obviously navigation and I guess compliance related prompts. Something that hopefully, if there's any of the more junior staff on today's presentation, I'd really encourage you to make a habit of using AiDA as kind of a cheat sheet to training and just your development of or your understanding of audit and accounting areas. Explain to me the concept of revenue recognition, and she can do that sort of stuff too. So if you're in a particular, perhaps you're in a tough area of the risk response phase of the engagement and you're trying to cover off a procedure and there's a terminology in there you just don't understand, that is something you can go to AiDA and ask for assistance with. And you can see there I've got quite a helpful answer around revenue recognition and some key points to consider with the idea. The other thing, if you are one of the doers on the job, I was a doer on an audit engagement many years ago, so I appreciate this feature. If you are a bit stumped as to how to start the email to the client to help me out with an answer to a particular question, or in my example here, following up on outstandings, I could even get her help to draft me an email to a client. There you go. She's given me a subject field and draft one of an email for me. I could copy that, open Outlook, paste it in an email, and I'm halfway there already. You can also use her for drilling into industry content as well, because it's an underlying large language model that we are using. Keep in mind, you could ask, and my next example, I'll clear that thread again. If you were on a particular type of client, I've picked building industry here. What are common revenue recognitions for a UK company in the building industry? So if I'm in that risk assessment stage of the job and I'm a little bit, where should I start? She can give you, again, a really helpful start point for that critical area of the engagement. Granted, I've sat with some auditors and done a bit of this, and they've said, this is really helpful, except they do have to apply their professional judgment, which was the point I made earlier. She will potentially, and obviously here, give you a number of risks. They're not all going to be relevant. But again, keep in mind, it's that start point. It's that draft one or start point of that particular process or work step that you're up to. So she's a really helpful chat bot and an aid that sits alongside your everyday working through a caseware audit file. That's the chatbot area, and I'm sure there's a few questions come up. What I will do, if it's okay, I'll demo the four sort of key areas, and then we'll go to questions all together. There's plenty of time in the session, so we'll be able to come back and demo and answer some of those. The next part I want to just demonstrate to you, I'm going to jump into, we call it phase B in our Aussie template. I've got PDFs in here, and you've obviously seen the summarize button. Now, I'm on your team with this. I don't like the Z either. Don't worry, it's on the list that we try and get the English, the British English in here in future iteration of AiDA. Right now, I'm looking past the Z. I'm pretending it's an S. And I'm using the summarize document feature. This is a huge feature that our early adopters have loved using. We've had it in Australia through the audit busy season, and we're just rolling out of that. So in Australia, it's 30 June is the year end. They have had this as part of that busy season, and the feedback I've got from people is it saved me loads of time reading big chunky contracts, for example, or some of those really big, important documents that I need to file. This, though, there's a couple of things. This is where you do have to be comfortable that the summary she's provided is appropriate. You can't blindly copy it and move on. So there is always going to be an element of that professional judgment and skepticism over those responses she provides. But the fantastic thing for all of you today is, as Natasha said, an update happened yesterday. These are brand new. These are our citations, and this is really exciting. Over the audit busy season in Australia, we didn't have this, and so auditors then had to find in the content where that summary came from. We can now take you directly to where AiDA found that particular piece of information in a PDF. So if you think about those 200 plus pages of contracts that you've had to read last year, this year, AiDA can read it for you and find all the critical content. She's going to save you truckloads of time. The other thing you can also then do is keep in mind the chatbot idea. You can interact with her in relation to this PDF. So what is the rental amount for? And you can actually ask specific questions. I've even had some auditors using her to take, for example, a rental amount and asked her to multiply it by 12 so I know what the rough annual rental amount should be that I'm then going to look at in my data in a caseware file. So as well as just the summarize, you can then interact with that summary and further drill into that. And the citations feature will give you where that's come from. This is a really exciting feature. We're really pleased with this one. It took a bit of time to develop, but now that it's out, as you guys are coming onto it, hopefully you'll enjoy using that. The one thing to keep in mind is if the PDF is a particularly poor quality, naturally, AiDA won't be able to read every PDF you drop into a caseware file. We are doing a lot of work in the background to improve how she reads PDFs. And so you can get some reasonably sketchy looking PDFs and she will still be able to read them. I think one of these is a little bit sketchy. You can see it's a scanned document. It's not a rendered PDF. But she should be able to read this one too, I believe. Oh, I clicked it twice. Oh, there you go. She didn't like that one. It'll depend on the quality. So there's always that element that she may not be able to read every PDF you do drop into the file. That is the summarize button. Now you might have noted it was summarize document. Now it says summarize. So you do have the ability, there are different levels of summary capability. You can ask AiDA to summarize at this level, being the engagement file. I'm not sure that that's a particularly helpful summary. Once you do get AiDA, click it and see what you think. I think it's more the PDF level or that individual document level that is most helpful. Having said that, if you are in a 200-page contract and you don't want a whole area summarized, you can also highlight a section and you can see the summarized document button becomes a summarized selection button. So you can refine what she's summarizing for you as well through that feature. So chatbot and summary are the top two elements of AiDA, that's for sure, and are proving really popular. The brand new feature that I'll now point out are these couple of buttons down here related to the question. And in particular, this one. This is 24 hours old, AiDA Fast versus AiDA Enhanced. So until recently, there was one and only model sitting under AiDA. What we're doing here is we're introducing different large language models that AiDA is calling on to help you with your prompts or your questions. AiDA Fast is our standard default summary tool, or sorry, a large language model that we use. I played with that, so I had her sitting in enhanced earlier. What the difference is with the enhanced model, conceptually, as we build out AiDA, the enhanced model will give you a more comprehensive response. So it will be up to you to decide, is fast more appropriate? I just need a quick answer to a question. Enhanced can take time to generate. Now we're talking seconds, not minutes or hours of difference. It's depending what you're asking of her, of course, but the enhanced response will ultimately give you a better or more comprehensive answer. And that may be important if you are asking her for assistance with drafting risk descriptions or emails or management letter points, for example. So it will be up to you to determine which is best. Right now, you can choose. There is the intent in future that there will need to be a charge possibly associated with the use of some of these models, because we are ultimately paying to access and use them through AiDA. But right now they're untapped, so you're welcome to have a go of both and see which perhaps gives you different answers and what model best suits the different use cases you choose to run through AiDA with. The button next to that is the fourth button, and then we'll toggle over to questions. It's our knowledge-based concept. So I am in the Agile Audit cloud audit tool. The Agile Audit's our Australian cloud audit tool. We've actually got a library of help built into the background of Agile Audit specific content. There is also, though, a wider caseware general help knowledge base. So what we're allowing here, and this is a brand new feature and will be refined over time, you can basically start to target different knowledge bases or buckets of knowledge that sit in behind caseware. In the UK, I understand you may not have any products listed here initially, but we will look to start padding that out and adding that content as well. General caseware help, though, will get through the caseware docs centralized help. And so you will still get assistance. It's helping you ultimately, I guess, shortcutting the process of having to go and find an FAQ on a website or perhaps calling the customer service or support team. You may be able to very quickly get an answer to a help question here through one of these. That will be refined over time. So you'll see different things appear on that list, but ultimately we want to build her to be context aware as well. I'm in an Agile file, it's offering me Agile Audit help. If I was in a different app, it would offer me that app's help. So it can also be aware of that. Just note that I'm demoing off an Australian cloud. It will be different in the UK initially. Now, I lied. There was one more thing I did want to show you. I did just want to give you the other places you can see and use AiDA. I've focused on Caseware Cloud today and cloud audit applications, but be aware that she is also available in a very limited sense in desktop. And I did mention that earlier. So let me show you what it looks like. If you have a Caseware file published to the cloud or linked to the Caseware cloud, on your cloud menu, you will see a Caseware AiDA button, which will open the panel down the side, just like we saw earlier. Now, instantly, you will probably see there are less buttons. We don't have the knowledge-based technology in desktop. In a very mature piece of desktop technology, it can be quite hard to put some of this in. So you will see the innovation and the cool things going straight into AiDA in the cloud. At the working papers level, it will be limited. And one of the disappointing things, unfortunately, we can't get around is you can summarize a PDF. There is still a summarize button. So that technology does still work, but we can't offer you that link to the source or the citations feature. You will just get a very standard summary. It'll be up to you if you do want to drill down to where that detail came from, of using the Control F and finding it yourself. So just be aware that it's not quite as powerful in desktop as it is in cloud. As you can see, you're still going to get, though, a helpful summary nonetheless. Chatbot's still there as well. The fast versus enhanced is also here. Just that knowledge base that's a little different. And the last place you can choose to use her, there's actually two. If anyone on the call uses Caseware AiDA, she will be available in future in AiDA. The other place is you can actually open her in a web browser. In future, we'll look to have a shortcut button inside Caseware Cloud to get to this, but I just have this website bookmarked in my bookmarks list. And as you can see, it's actually my Caseware Cloud firm URL sitting behind it. So meaning I still have to have a Caseware Cloud login to be able to use AiDA in a standalone browser. So you can't unfortunately share this with the team down the corridor to use an AI tool. They will still need a Caseware Cloud staff login, but this can be a helpful way. You don't have to get into a Caseware file. If you are, maybe you're doing your CPA studies and you want to ask some accounting and auditing questions of an AI tool, you could be using her in the browser for that sort of stuff as well. So she's accessible from a number of places, and hopefully today's demonstration has given you some food for thought on some of the use cases around where she can really benefit you. At this point in my slide deck, Natasha, I think I'll pass back to you just to run through, now that people have seen AiDA,
Yep.
if they're interested, what to do next.
Yes, absolutely. And then obviously we can run over to questions. So yeah, thanks, Sarah. And obviously, I think some of the big benefits that we've heard already from people is getting junior auditors up to speed, if they've got a lot of questions. I know people can have a lot of questions that they want to ask fellow colleagues, etc. It's a nice opportunity for them to be able to clear a few things off with AiDA, just to field some of those questions that naturally junior auditors will have. Same for new employees. I think anyone who's new to caseware as a whole, especially when we start feeding in those knowledge bases, which is just essentially just coming out almost every day, being able to query AiDA and ask about how to use caseware and the application, I think is really, really useful. So for anyone who is interested, like I said, AiDA is already available in the UK. We do have a number of customers already using AiDA and having enabled it for their firm. If you are interested, there is essentially a preferred access request form that needs to be completed. Once that form is completed, I think it's, 5 to 10 work days is what we're saying to get it enabled. So essentially 1 or 2 weeks that until it's enabled on your firm. Now, you'll get a confirmation email to say that's been enabled. Once that's done, you will have to enable access for the people in your firm that you want to gain access. So obviously, safety and security is paramount. I think we're really conscious of the fact that a lot of firms really want to use AI, but they're worried about the safety implications of that. So Sarah, you've already mentioned the safety procedures of not actually retaining the prompts and making sure that the data is secure, but we also want to make sure that people can harness who it is in their firm will actually have access to that. So if you want to restrict a couple of people to start off with, just to test it out within your firm, or if you want to make sure that not everyone has access to it, you can do that. So you will have to enable that for the people that you want to have access. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, if you want us to send you some information, feel free to pop your email address in the Q&A box, or we do have a marketing email address, which I'll show at the end, that you can request access, but also you can contact your account manager as well, customer support, anyone. We're more than happy to send you information over. So yeah, so that's great. And Sarah, I've got a number of questions here that think I did see a couple on asking about working papers. Obviously, you showed that. That's great. You also mentioned the availability within IDEA, and I'll just
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit on that. So I believe that the version of IDEA we're aiming for it to come out with is version 13. Hopefully that is still the case. That's the
Mhm.
update that we are expecting AiDA to come in. You will have to have a cloud license, is my understanding. So you would have to have a Caseware cloud license in order to be able to use that. So it's the only thing that you do need to bear in mind. Now, once you do have a cloud license, because I've seen a couple of questions here around the cost. AiDA is included within the Caseware Cloud license. So if you already have that Caseware Cloud license, AiDA is at no additional cost to you. But if you don't have a Caseware Cloud license, you will need to have one in order to be able to use AiDA. So just bear that in mind. Right. Let's see what else that we have. Sarah, I'm going to throw a few over. Hopefully you're able to answer. And obviously, caveat here, if there's anything particularly technical, if there's anything that we need to check up on, we will get back with any questions that we're not able to answer at the time. But I will throw
Sure.
a few over. Would she be able to review bank statements and pull out specific data, e.g., any transactions over a certain value?
Oh, that is a really good question.
Mm.
And on our roadmap. So that conceptually, and I don't want to get techie, and it makes it sound like I'm techie. I am not techie. I was once an auditor as well. So I've learned a lot around technology. But from my understanding, that particular point that you've asked about relates to the structuring of data that gets exported out of PDFs. So that summary, that those numbers that I ran and found earlier relating to rent, for example, in my lease agreement, that's ultimately unstructured data. And so what we're building is the ability to structure unstructured data so we can then do the next step and find the transaction or find the balance over. So at this point in time, she is a little limited in what she can do. I mean, that's a good question. If you could, and look, to be honest, I don't have bank statements in my land to throw in here and demo to you. But that's something, if you opened up a PDF and asked her to look for a specific number, she may be able to do that. But if you ask for transactions over a certain balance, I think you're starting to get into that need for structured data area. And so every now and again, I'll get a good question like that and I'll say, have a go and see what she offers you. But genuinely, I think it's probably worth it. It's a really good idea of something you could test. But structuring of data that comes out of PDFs is something we'd like to do. For example, lease agreements. We've looked at being able to generate basically a table of data that if you've got 6 lease agreements like I have here, finding that commonality in them, the rental amount, and being able to do comparison tables and calculations would be a valuable audit tool. So that is on our list. So it's a good question.
Yeah, really good question. And I think that's the interesting thing about working with Gen AI is that, we know a lot of use cases that it helps. We know where it works really well. But sometimes I think you will end up finding things that we don't even know or haven't even thought of as something particularly useful for you. And that's really the beauty of Gen AI is that it lends itself to a lot of use cases that we don't even really know about or we haven't really thought about or considered.
Yeah.
There's a question here. Actually, this is an interesting one. So, is there a list of standard prompts, audit and caseware cloud relevant? Now, I know the answer. The answer is we don't have a list of standard prompts, right? But it does generate a good conversation here about doing a little bit of thought leadership work, I think, around that concept of prompt engineering, right, Sarah? And I know that
Mm-hmm.
there's stuff that we're working on in the background in order to, I think Danielle, who's heads up the AiDA team, is looking at putting together a bit of a masterclass around prompt engineering. Sarah, am I
Correct.
correct in that? Yeah.
You are absolutely correct. And that's something that came up early on that people were sort of suggesting this is great if I just knew how to write a better prompt so I could get the best out of it. I've learnt through playing, and you will yourselves learn through playing. You will ask a question, you'll get a really unhelpful answer, go, oh, of course I didn't put the country in. And you'll start to develop that skill yourself. But to fast track that, absolutely, that's something that the learning team are looking at, being able to develop a bit of a short course almost, as well as conceptually on our roadmap, we also have the idea of a prompt library that in future it'd be great to be able to have that shortcut list available that you could pick from, perhaps the common prompts that you would like to use. So that is definitely on our list, and a great suggestion.
Right. And yeah, really good suggestion. And I'm just going to jump back into the licensing bit because I know I mentioned it being available for Caseware Cloud. There's no additional cost. It's really including that Caseware Cloud license. For anyone who's a
Mhm.
desktop user, you will have to be a hybrid user. So you'll have to have a Caseware Cloud license in order to be able to use it. So that's the one thing that I should just clarify, I guess. There is a question here around availability in Ireland. So AiDA will absolutely be available in Ireland as well. So it's essentially UK and Irish products will be available for. Now, I'm going to throw another one over to you, Sarah. Can we use AiDA on Excel files?
Not yet. No, that is on our list too. The issue we've got there is you probably, if you are a Caseware Cloud audit product user, you'll know that when you open Excel, it has to open in the native Excel application, so it's a step away from Caseware. So not yet. In future, that one's a little bit more challenging for us, but it is on our list, recognizing that you, as an auditor, if you're an auditor, spend a lot of time in Excel and those supporting work papers. I think as we start to structure the data more, we will be putting those into caseware document types so that we can get AiDA working in them more. So there may be over time more of a need to be using caseware native documents. I know it will depend on the context and your clients will be giving you Excel files anyway. So that's a challenging space. A very relevant question though, which absolutely take on board. That's
Yeah,
something for the future.
definitely. A couple questions on the security aspect, which I thought is always worth just reaffirming because it is so important for firms. So how secure is AiDA? Is any of the information stored?
Yes. So to recap on that, and I'm glad it was asked. It's worth just circling back to all of the prompts I've entered today. As you can see, I was using the refresh button a bit. The second I hit that button, I lose all history of that thread, and I can't access that thread ever again. It's gone. Nothing is retained, even in that individual instance of caseware for my morning that I happen to be using AiDA. It's gone as soon as I hit refresh, so nothing is retained. In the back end, the only it's not even retention, it's the wrong word for it, but we are tracking very basically how often the AiDA button is pressed. We can see that. We can't see the prompts you're putting in at all. That is very secure. It's inside your Caseware Cloud instance. And so nothing is retained. There is some work being done to further, I guess, give you comfort and provide you the guidance you need around security. We do have a security page on the Caseware website that I'm sure Natasha or the team could make available to you that clarifies or confirms the certifications over the Caseware Cloud platform at a global level. And we'll look to over time as AiDA rolls ahead and more of AI technology is out there, we recognize the importance of being able to prove and give you that comfort over its security. So there'll be more coming in that space relating to, I guess, those certifications.
Great. Thank you very much. And can AiDA create tables, add columns?
Not yet. She can do a very little bit of formatting in that narrow bar down the right-hand side at the moment. That will form part of the work done around the structuring of data again, that we will look to be building out of that tables and content generation. So not yet.
And I also have, so I do have a couple of questions around, and I'm trying to see if I can consolidate these questions. So there is a question here around time frame for the release of AiDA within Caseware Cloud applications, a time frame for the UK release. So just to clarify on this, so AiDA is available in the UK. You can absolutely
Yep.
use her within Cloud Audit. So Sarah was only showing her Australian solution just because she doesn't have access. We didn't actually get around to enabling her to use for the UK one, but it absolutely works for Cloud Audit within the UK. Like I said, we have a number of firms using it already. We, use it internally. So she is absolutely available within the UK. Now,
Yep.
I am going to throw another curveball for you, Sarah. I'm very sorry about this. But we did have a question, which I think is an interesting one, around obviously we've made AiDA very fit for purpose for audit and accounting to make sure that people are using her in a professional context, which I think is obviously another concern that firms have. Now, someone has asked a question around whether she can help with tax queries.
Yeah, okay. Good question. Genuinely, I think she can. Why don't we ask
Should we
her
try?
something?
This is all very yeah, this is the benefit of doing live demos. I think we were keen to do it live today because we think people want to see the product live, but again, being Gen AI, this we don't know what she's going to answer essentially.
Yeah, she could make me look really silly. And look, that's such a vague question, but I think if you went and asked tax legislation and gave references, I think she'd help you. I think she'll help us here. Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
I think she will. I think she will.
I think she will. So, but what I will also say, obviously, tax is a big part of our UK offering as well. So, it's definitely something that we want to make sure that she's going to support as
Yeah.
well, especially when we have corporate tax in the cloud. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think you'll find that she does. Obviously, if there's any at any point, if you ask questions and you think, you know what, I think she should have been able to answer that and she didn't. Like Sarah mentioned, there is that thumbs down button. Please do use it. Send a thumbs down. Send us a bit of an example of what you asked and she wasn't able to answer. And we can always work to refine that.
Yeah.
We don't
Absolutely.
obviously store the prompts, so we can't really learn necessarily from it, but we can make sure that we upskill that language learning model to be able to answer those tax related questions.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, this is very Australian, all the apps you're seeing on this screen, but for the admin users in today's call, just to and clarify a little bit what Natasha was talking about, although AiDA is a function of Caseware Cloud, when it comes to enabling her, she acts as an app. So she looks and feels like a standalone application. So this is how, once AiDA is enabled for your firm, an administrator will come in and give either to an all staff group or individual staff members access to AiDA. So if you only want certain people on the team using her, you can limit it. But what that does is it turns AiDA on in every single cloud application. So I was using Agile Audit. If I now went and looked at one of our other products, our SMSF product, for example, self-managed superannuation funds for those playing along at home, because she's enabled for the all staff group on my particular cloud, no matter what application I'm in, she is always there. It isn't enabled at the app level, the individual app level, it's just at the cloud level. So hopefully that gives you some comfort. So if you are in a tax app, you can still use AiDA. And Natasha's point was a really helpful one, a really good suggestion. If you ask a question you think she should be helping you with and she doesn't, please let us know. That's the stuff we really do want to hear about.
Okay, and I have another question, which I'm hoping I haven't asked yet because I'm starting to lose track. I'm jumping up and down these questions, trying to consolidate them and starting to lose track of what I've asked or not. But have I asked you if AiDA can summarize a financial report and suggest key audit risks?
Oof. No, you haven't. Kind of wish you didn't. No, just kidding. It's a very good question. And a common one. She can summarize any PDF. So you can drop a set of financial statements into AiDA and have her summarize them for you. If you ask things like and provide the key risks, she will give you responses. I'm not sure how reliable they are. They won't be based on the number here and the number there. This is a risk. That I think will come in future as we refine the use cases and the development of where AiDA sits and works. So that has been asked a couple of times of me, and it's a very good question. I think you'll find there are elements of that summary ability that you are going to love, and then there's some you're going to go, oh, if only she did that next step. And so those next steps, again, are the things we'd love to hear about. That one has been asked.
Yeah.
That's why I guess that point of it not keeping prompts. If you use any AI tool, generic AI tool out in the World Wide Web, and you asked a question about your client, you might be shot on sight, or something probably not as drastic as that. But that we're not meant to be putting client information into Gen AI. But in here, because it doesn't retain prompts and it's inside your cloud instance, you can potentially ask some company information. So if you were trying to understand the risks associated with one of your clients, whack a name in there and see if she gives you something if you'd like. But generally, the example I used early on about the revenue recognition risks for a building company in the UK, I'd encourage you more so to be using that, and that'll give you perhaps industry specific type considerations. When it comes to one individual company and its risk, she's only going to be so helpful, I think, in that space for now. It's a very good suggestion, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a question again. I know I keep throwing these over because, and half the time I'm actually throwing over stuff that I know we might not be able to do yet, but it's because it's really exciting seeing some of these, these potentials. Now, someone has asked if AiDA if she can create graphs, charts, perform trend analysis from documents, if something's converted into a PDF.
Not
Really
yet.
exciting, but really exciting potential there. So, so the answer is not yet, but again, I'm finding it all very interesting. Some of the thoughts
Oh,
people
yeah.
are having as
There's
they
lots.
work along.
Absolutely. There's lots in that area. And so, a case where we're working really hard on more than just AiDA, there's lots happening. And I know, for example, we're working on the analytics element in our cloud technology and the ability to embed analytics into our audit applications, for example, in future. And then if you think about it, if there's analytics technology, that the process of running stuff, having AiDA say this number looks weird, run an analytic on it, and potentially have those two very important pieces of technology working together, the potential in future for what this technology could do for you is very, very exciting. And that's why I talked early on about our roadmap. We've already got so many fantastic ideas on the list. It's just a matter of working through it in a
Yeah.
prioritized order of the next best use case that we can help with. So that sort of idea of generating results and generating analytics and generating graphs and trends and all of that, yeah, that's all really good stuff. And again, on our list for future to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I think it's worth mentioning actually around that embedded analytics part that you mentioned, which is something that we are going to be releasing within Cloud Audits over the next couple of months or so. So you will start seeing the opportunity to be able to use that within Cloud Audit, and obviously AiDA will definitely feed into that in the long term.
Mhm.
Um, Someone has asked if AiDA can work with Extend or PBC.
Yeah, she works in any cloud-based app. So if you are using a PBC or Extend app, it's just another cloud app. So she is available. It's a really interesting idea, to be completely honest with you. I haven't played much with her in that context, but she will be on that panel on the right-hand side. So I'd be interested to know what you might consider using her for. But yep, she's inside there. So perhaps she's helping summarize the PDFs that the client has sent you through PBC or Extend. You could be doing that summarization here rather than inside your audit file and determining, do I actually want that inside an audit file? Yeah, she's there too.
Right. So I'm going to take two more questions. Is she able to access the web so as to enhance her responses, maybe with public available information on a particular client?
Possibly, and this is where it gets a bit grey, and I don't want to get all nerdy on you, and be completely honest, I'll probably give you a really poor explanation, but ultimately the large language model that AiDA is tapping into to get answers from has learned that information from the World Wide Web. So if I say, provide me a link to the website for XYZ company, she will go into that large language model and look for that. If you are asking very current web stuff off the web, she may not have that in the model she's actually tapping into to get the answer for you from. So she's not, and look, this is a good thing to Google through an AI tool as to how Gen AI works. It is not asking your question of Google. It's asking your question of the large language model that has learned that from the web. And that is, I hope I haven't confused you further with trying to explain that, but I'd really encourage you to sit with an AI tool and ask it, how does Gen AI work? And that might help you with a little bit of an explanation around that. But yeah, I do understand that question. I get that asked a little bit as to, hang on, where is that answer ultimately from? And it is a little bit of a mind-bending thing to get your head around initially.
Yeah, definitely. Um, okay, so last question, which is a good one to close off on. I think because we have had a couple of people ask this, but essentially, what is the cost? So I just want to, I think it's really
Mm.
important to reiterate this. So if you have a Caseware Cloud license, AiDA is included in that. So there is no additional cost. I think in the long term, we may find that we end up charging for certain aspects. Like, for example, if you're using a more enhanced model, which costs us as an organization a little bit more to manage as well, we may limit the amount of enhanced requests that you can make a day, may charge extra for more. But at the moment, both of those options are completely included within the Caseware Cloud license. So if you are keen to trial her out, you can absolutely enable her for your firm. You won't be, and you have a Caseware Cloud license, you will not be charged any extra. You can limit it for a couple of people within your firm just to test it out. You can disable it if you want afterwards. That's absolutely fine. As long as you have a Caseware Cloud license, she is included in that. If you don't, then you would have to get a Caseware Cloud license in order to be able to use her.
Mhm.
Excellent. So we're on time, I think. And Yeah, so thank you very, very much, Joanne. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your time today in showing AiDA, especially with this new release that we literally just had yesterday. I mentioned there'd be a marketing email. There is one there, marketing.uk@caseware.com. If you want to contact that email address and request to be enabled, I have had a few email addresses coming through the Q&A, so we will be sending information on the with the request form. Otherwise, again, thank you very much. And have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you.